How are you today?
Not bad. I'm very well, thanks. It's a bit of a noisy day in New York City, so I apologize. There might be some background noise, but
Oh,
it's.
that's okay. That's
How are you doing?
yeah, pretty good. It's a cloudy, quiet day here.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice to meet you. And so you are in New York?
That's right.
Yeah. How long have you lived in New York?
Well, I moved in 2017 to New York. Before that, I'd been living in Toronto. I was in Toronto for about 25 years, so I feel very Torontonian. It
Yeah.
still feels like home to me in a way. But I was just getting more and more work south of the border, and it seemed like a practical time to relocate. And for the past 2 years, I haven't been traveling as much. But before in 2017, I certainly was traveling a lot, and New York is a good place to travel from and to. Lots of options, airlines and buses and trains. So,
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned that, could I ask, like, how has COVID impacted all of your projects and performances?
oh yeah, well, that is an interesting question to try to answer because I'm not even sure yet the full impact
Yeah.
that COVID is going to leave on my career and the performing arts in general. Not just I sort of specialize in early music, and I'm concerned about all the performing arts because I think that having shut down as we did to try to be as careful as possible and to protect our patrons as much as we could was really unprecedented. And so I think that groups are going to be figuring out what that means for the future, from my humble perspective, for years to come. There's been so I think some groups have really struggled because they couldn't make money because they weren't performing. Other groups found ways to be very creative and to stay connected with their donors through the shutdown. And there's been an amazing, I think, level of creativity that came out of that necessity to find a way to keep connecting with our patrons. And personally, I found it. I was surprised by how hard it was for me to stop performing, because I thought, well, I've always felt it was a privilege to perform. I've never taken it for granted. And I thought, well, looking at what we need to do collectively to try to get through this, it makes perfect sense that I should stop performing until it's safe again. But I really struggled, and I didn't realize, I think, before how much I relied on connecting with donors and patrons and my other colleagues. Because of course I still had music. I was practicing away on my violin, but being alone doing it changed everything. And when I finally did start to get to perform again for patrons, I was blown away by how much it mattered to them.
Oh,
In
yeah.
spite of all of the difficult things that they'd gone through personally, professionally, but just nobody, not one single person said, "Oh yeah, I'm not into the arts anymore." It was
Yeah.
it's the opposite. People
Yeah.
care in my experience, people care so much about what we performers do, and it's been really inspiring for me.
Yeah. As a concert, I'm sure you're a concert goer also, and if you've had a chance also to be now an audience member after the pandemic, well, in the midst still of pandemic, but now that concerts are coming back, I've felt that too. It's so
Yeah.
special to be in the audience too, finally.
Interesting. I keep getting struck. I do go to concerts whenever I'm able to,
Yeah.
not to perform, but to be in them.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing like it, and I've been struck so many times the past few months by the unlikelihood that we would be able to, as a human race, bring all of these complicated things together to make it possible for an orchestra and maybe sometimes a choir to perform in a room for people.
Yeah.
It's just the logistics, that the fact that we're finding a way, it just boggles my mind. And I've been struck afresh by how really magical it is to get to have that connection. I mean, all these people,
Yeah.
they leave their comfortable homes and they come to a concert hall. And
Yeah.
what a joy, what a privilege to be able to share that. And it's been great to do digital content online, so much better than nothing. But in my experience, nothing's come close to that concert hall experience, which is so wonderful to get back to.
Yeah. And you are the guest artist in residence for the MCO. How long have you been in this role?
Uh, it was 2 years before the pandemic. So I'm thinking I might be getting this exactly wrong. Time has sort of become warped, and I have
Yeah.
but I did have at least two seasons of collaboration with Manitoba Chamber Orchestra before we went online. And I've been in touch with the organization as much as wonderfully throughout the shutdown, and really appreciated getting to make some digital content for the Chamber Orchestra from afar. But I'm
Yeah.
so excited to get to see people in person then reconnect with everybody next week. It feels like it's been, I don't know, a lot longer than 2 years, so I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, so you, and over all of the years, and a little bit more difficult during the pandemic, but you must have made so many connections with Winnipeggers and of course with the musicians in the orchestra. Is there anything that kind of stands out, in your experiences and performances?
Winnipeg is incredible. It's such an amazing place. I'm from the West Coast. I'm from BC, and then I did my training in Toronto.
Okay.
And then I was very fortunate to be in an orchestra called Tafelmusik that traveled across the country. And we never logistically had time much to spend in Winnipeg, but whenever we went there, I was blown away by the enthusiastic audiences. It really stands out as a city that seems to me, from my perspective, to really value culture of every kind. And I had so many really kind patrons coming up to me and telling me all about all the wonderful things that Winnipeg has to offer culturally. And I was like, I feel like I was late to the party. I was missing it for these years. And so, finding that community in Winnipeg, it's people really, there's super fans there of the highest quality, and I really appreciate that. It's been so interesting trying to schedule out of the pandemic, because most performers will be booked up a couple of years in advance, and I was in that position, and so everything was stopped, and many of the groups that I collaborate with wanted to reschedule, so it's been postponing, and I've really appreciated that, and I've wanted to come back and do all the things, but then that were rescheduled, and then also new seasons, and there's not any extra days in the calendar or weeks, and so it's been an interesting position to be in, to go from almost zero to, I feel like I'm sprinting flat out to try to get all the concerts. And I mean, it's a joy to even try, but it's a lot right now.
Yes. I wanted to ask about being the guest artist in residence. What has that meant for you?
Well, it's been a really wonderful way for me to because we've been collaborating over years, to get to know a lot of the players better, more to work when you work with somebody once. Often I go in as a guest, either as a soloist or director, and I work with a group and I work once and then I move on, which is wonderful. But it's you can establish relationships that way, but it's kind of deeper when I get to come back and keep working with the same musicians. So I feel as though it's getting to know everybody in the orchestra and management, the players and management has really helped me grow as an artist. I think there's through collaborating with this exceptional group of musicians, I've gotten more ideas of what I want to do, like different repertoire to bring in the future, music that we hadn't played together before. So it's been really interesting for me. I've learned a lot, which is my goal. I'm always trying to learn something.
Yes. So maybe we'll talk a bit about the repertoire. I know you have so much to say about the repertoire and the composers.
Yeah, I guess I would say that it's music that's all really near and dear to my heart, because it's really fun to play and fun to share. The very famous Mozart Concerto in D major, it's very famous for violinists, and deservedly so. It's something that I think a lot of people might be familiar with, but I'm delighted, and I've played it quite a few times, but I'm really excited to play it with a different group of colleagues, a new group of colleagues, because I find that when I perform concertos like that frequently in different places, it's never boring, because each group of individuals that I play it with brings something different to the table. So even though I played that particular concerto right before, it was one of my last concerts before the pandemic shut down in Boston, so 2020, but that was with an entirely different group of people from who I'll be collaborating with in Winnipeg, and so it'll feel fresh, it won't feel like it's a couple hundred years old. And then I wanted to pair that concerto with things that might be related in terms of theme. There's a symphony by J.C. Bach that might be some music that might be less familiar to some people. He was the youngest son of Johann Sebastian Bach, and sometimes people call him the London Bach because he moved to London. And he actually was incredibly famous as one of the foremost purveyors of what we now think of as the classical style. And the reason I wanted to program it is because A, it's beautiful music, and B, actually Mozart met J.C. Bach in London when Mozart was 8 years old, and they seem to have become friends actually and stayed friends. And for certain, Mozart was exposed to J.C. Bach's music at a tender age of 8, and it seems that he really absorbed a lot of wonderful qualities of the style of J.C. Bach into his own music. And I just find that connection kind of fascinating. And then, you know, Handel, one of the greats, I wanted to have a concerto grosso in there to have some kind of contrasting mood to the fairly there's fairly happy, upbeat violin concerto. And this particular concerto grosso it's a bit of a dark and stormy, very gorgeous, lush work. Handel wrote those concertos in that opus 6, to be played in amongst his oratorio performances, to actually, that were going on at the time, to actually try to entice bigger audiences. I think that's really interesting. So they I think because of that, they're really dramatic. So it's a really dramatic piece. And then we're starting off with Johann Sebastian Bach's A minor violin concerto. That's a piece that many violinists train with when they're learning their craft. And I'm no different. I've been playing it since I was a little kid, still trying to make it sound as good as I can. And I love that piece, because it's just fantastic music. And it's actually possible, there's a theory out there that maybe Johann Sebastian Bach maybe wrote it for his young children who he was training for the violin. So it was maybe a training piece for him as well. But it's exquisite. So I just, in only the hands of Bach can make something that might have been actually an exercise. Exquisitely beautiful. So it's a pretty, there's a lot, it's a dense program, but I'm really looking forward to it.
So other upcoming projects, I know you said you're just moving into a new season.
Yeah.
With your ensemble in, did you say Boston?
Yeah, it's in Boston.
Yeah.
That's the Handel and Haydn Society is near and dear to my heart. It was founded in 1815 and is one it's one of the world's longest continuously performing arts organizations, and I'm really proud of being a member of it. The group did the premiere of Messiah in North America, and many other wonderful things over the years. And we have a season that takes place in Boston, starting up in October next year, and we play in Symphony Hall, and it's all historical instruments, and I love it. Other than that group, I'm going to be touring around a little bit in the summertime, doing some summer festivals that I'm thrilled to be getting back to, because again, those got pushed out of previous summers to this summer. So I'll be in Nebraska in Lincoln at this Lincoln Crossroads Festival. That's in July. And then I'll be going to Breck Music, which is in Breckenridge, Colorado, in August. And I think I'll be in Toronto too at some point to do a concert. So there's a little bit of this and that. And then I look forward to taking a little bit of time off in the summer too, and finding somewhere in the air conditioning to cool off.
Great. Yeah, it's so good to get started with things again, festivals, especially those summer festivals for a few years. Yeah,
it's nice. It's going to be nice to be. Yeah, I'm very excited. Most of us can't wait to get started and play this great concert next week. It's going to be so fun.
And I wanted to ask if you have a bit of a playlist, things that you like listening to that are maybe not what we would expect. Who knows?
Yeah, that's good. I've been listening to a lot of jazz recently, and it depends on I'll do the easy thing on Spotify, and I'll just pick a playlist, and it'll be like New York jazz, and I'll just learn, because I don't know anything about jazz. I never studied it, and I just admire people who can play it. So if I'll have it on in the kitchen while I'm cooking, and if I hear a tune that really jumps out at me, I'll run over and find out who it is, and find out what artist it is and look them up. So that's been interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
I can't wait to get back working with the musicians again, and also to see to reconnect with your wonderful patrons. I've met some of the nicest people ever there, so I'm really excited to come back. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll see you next week already. I know it's coming up.
Great.
So
yeah,
great.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thanks for making the time to chat.